In this episode, we're going to make roles and responsibilities feel like a practical tool for keeping an organization sane, because beginners often hear those words and think they are just job descriptions or paperwork. In governance of enterprise IT, roles and responsibilities are how the enterprise turns good intentions into accountability you can actually see and enforce. When roles are unclear, decisions drift, work gets duplicated, and problems bounce between teams until they become emergencies. When responsibilities are vague, everyone believes something will be handled, but no one feels obligated to handle it, and then leadership is surprised when outcomes fall short. The reason this matters for the exam is that many scenario questions describe chaos, conflict, or repeated failures that are really caused by unclear ownership rather than by technical limitations. Our goal is to build a clear mental model for how governance assigns who does what, who decides what, who is accountable for outcomes, and how leaders make accountability real instead of symbolic. By the end, you should be able to recognize when a problem is an accountability problem and describe how roles and responsibilities fix it. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Start by separating the words role, responsibility, authority, and accountability because they are related but not identical, and the exam expects you to treat them carefully. A role is a defined function in the governance system, such as a decision maker, a risk owner, a service owner, or a policy owner. A responsibility is the work or obligation that comes with that role, such as approving funding, monitoring performance, or ensuring a control exists and is effective. Authority is the permission to make certain decisions or to direct actions, which must be assigned deliberately, not assumed. Accountability is the obligation to answer for outcomes, including the consequences when outcomes are not achieved. A common beginner mistake is to treat responsibility and accountability as the same, but they are different. You can be responsible for doing tasks without being accountable for the final outcome, and in governance that distinction matters. Another mistake is to assume that a senior person is automatically accountable for everything, which can create unrealistic expectations and hidden gaps. Governance aims to match authority and accountability so that the person expected to answer for an outcome has the power to influence it. When you learn these distinctions, you can more accurately interpret scenario questions and choose answers that strengthen governance rather than just adding effort. Now define what visible accountability means, because visibility is the part that transforms a promise into a system. Visible accountability means that the enterprise can clearly identify who owns a decision, who owns an outcome, and who must take action when performance is off track. It means ownership is not hidden in informal conversations or personal relationships. It is a known part of how the enterprise operates. Visibility also means that when something goes wrong, the enterprise can trace back to the responsible role and understand what decision or oversight step failed, so it can improve rather than repeat the same mistakes. This is not about blaming people. It is about preventing confusion and preventing silent failures. When accountability is visible, people know what they are expected to deliver, leaders know who to ask for status, and stakeholders know where to escalate issues. In contrast, when accountability is invisible, status updates become vague, decisions get revisited repeatedly, and the organization relies on heroics instead of repeatable processes. On the exam, answers that make accountability explicit and traceable are often stronger than answers that simply demand more reporting. Enforceable accountability is the next piece, and it means that accountability has real consequences and real mechanisms to correct course. Enforceable does not necessarily mean punishment. It means there are governance processes that require action when outcomes are not being met. For example, if a system owner is accountable for service reliability, enforceable accountability means there are agreed performance expectations, monitoring that shows whether reliability is being achieved, and a clear process for remediation when it is not. If a risk owner is accountable for certain risks, enforceability means risk acceptance decisions are documented, risk levels are reviewed regularly, and mitigation actions are tracked when risk exceeds limits. Without enforceability, Accountability becomes a label that makes leaders feel organized but does not change behavior. Enforceability requires authority, resources, and oversight because you cannot hold someone accountable for a result if you deny them the tools to influence it. It also requires escalation paths so that when accountability breaks down, leadership can intervene. Beginners should learn that enforceable accountability is built into governance systems through decision rights, monitoring, and remediation, not through motivation speeches. This is why roles and responsibilities are a governance foundation, not a human resources detail. To assign roles and responsibilities well, governance begins by identifying what needs ownership, which is often more helpful than starting with organizational charts. Ownership areas include strategic direction for IT, investment prioritization, benefit realization, risk acceptance, security oversight, compliance obligations, data stewardship, architecture coherence, and service reliability. Each of these areas produces enterprise outcomes that can drift if nobody owns them. For example, if no one owns benefit realization, projects can be delivered and celebrated even when expected benefits never appear, and the enterprise learns the wrong lessons. If no one owns data stewardship, data quality can decay across systems until reporting becomes unreliable, and every department blames another. If no one owns architecture coherence, local teams choose tools independently, and complexity rises until change becomes slow and expensive. These are governance failures, and they are solved by assigning ownership to roles with the authority and responsibility to manage the area. When you hear a scenario about repeated drift, treat it as a hint that an ownership role is missing or unclear. Assigning ownership is the first step toward visible accountability. Another key beginner concept is that ownership must exist on both the business side and the IT side, because governance of enterprise IT is shared by nature. Many outcomes, like customer experience, compliance posture, or operational efficiency, are not purely technical, so they cannot be owned only by IT. A business leader may own the outcome and define what value means, while IT leaders may own parts of delivery and operational performance that enable that value. This shared ownership is where many organizations struggle because each side assumes the other side is accountable, leading to gaps. Governance clarifies who owns the business outcome, who owns the enabling technology capability, and how they coordinate decisions and oversight. For example, a business owner might be accountable for achieving improved customer onboarding, while an IT service owner might be accountable for system uptime and performance that supports onboarding. Both roles need clear responsibilities and a shared view of measures so that success is aligned. On the exam, when a scenario shows business and IT blaming each other, a strong governance answer often assigns clear ownership across both sides and sets shared measures. This reduces conflict by replacing assumptions with explicit responsibilities. A practical way to think about responsibilities is to separate them into decision responsibilities and operational responsibilities, because governance needs both. Decision responsibilities include approving investments, setting priorities, approving exceptions, accepting risk, and defining standards. Operational responsibilities include delivering services, maintaining controls, monitoring performance, and executing remediation. A governance system fails when decision responsibilities exist without operational ownership because decisions do not translate into results. It also fails when operational responsibilities exist without decision authority, because teams are expected to deliver outcomes without the ability to resolve conflicts or secure resources. For beginners, imagine a service team responsible for reliability but unable to influence funding for resilience improvements. Accountability would be unfair and ineffective. Governance assigns responsibilities so that the right roles can make decisions and take action within clear boundaries. It also defines how decisions and operations connect, such as how a policy owner works with process owners and service owners to implement and monitor compliance. This connection is what makes accountability enforceable rather than theoretical. When you evaluate answers on the exam, look for whether responsibilities link decision-making to execution with clear ownership. Let's bring in the concept of handoffs, because even when roles are defined, accountability can break down at boundaries. Handoffs are the points where responsibility moves from one role to another, such as when a project transitions to operations, when a vendor service transitions to internal support, or when a risk decision transitions into mitigation work. Many failures happen at handoffs because everyone assumes the other role is handling something, like documentation, monitoring, or training. Governance reduces handoff failure by defining responsibilities at the boundary, such as who must approve the transition, what evidence must be provided, and who owns the outcome after the handoff. For example, if a new system goes live, the governance framework might require that monitoring, support processes, and ownership are established before the system is considered fully transitioned. That is not a technical configuration detail. It is an accountability design choice. On the exam, scenarios that describe recurring incidents after changes often point to weak handoffs and unclear post-deployment ownership. Roles and responsibilities that include explicit transition accountability can be the strongest governance fix. A related topic is the difference between being consulted and being accountable, because organizations often confuse input with ownership. Many stakeholders should be consulted on decisions, especially when decisions affect them, but consultation does not mean they are responsible for delivering the outcome. If everyone has equal say, decisions can stall and accountability becomes unclear. Governance structures often define who must be consulted, who must approve, and who must be informed, so decisions can move forward without pretending everyone is equally accountable. Beginners sometimes think fairness means everyone decides together, but governance fairness is about transparency and legitimacy, not about equal authority for all. Legitimate governance gives stakeholders a voice while still assigning a clear owner who has the right and duty to decide. This is especially important for risk decisions, where technical experts should inform the decision, but enterprise leaders often must own the acceptance of major risk. When you see answers that create large consensus groups without clear accountability, those answers often lead to slow decisions and weak enforcement. Strong answers assign clear authority while ensuring appropriate consultation. Once roles are assigned, governance must make accountability measurable, because what is not measured tends to be ignored. This does not mean everything must be measured with perfect precision, but it does mean key responsibilities must have observable indicators. If a role is accountable for benefits, there should be measures for whether benefits are appearing after delivery. If a role is accountable for service performance, there should be measures for reliability and responsiveness. If a role is accountable for compliance, there should be evidence of control effectiveness and issue remediation. These measures support enforceability because leaders can compare expectations to reality and require action when gaps appear. Without measures, accountability becomes subjective and disagreements become political arguments rather than evidence-based discussions. Governance uses measures to create a shared reality and to make remediation decisions defensible. Beginners often think measurement is only for audits, but in governance, it is primarily for leadership decision-making. On the exam, answers that define accountability along with monitoring and remediation are often stronger than answers that only assign roles. Another important ingredient is making accountability durable through documentation and continuity practices, because staff turnover is a normal part of enterprise life. If accountability depends on personal memory or informal agreements, it disappears when key people leave. Governance makes accountability durable by defining roles in a way that survives individual departures and by ensuring responsibilities are recorded in enterprise processes. This does not require heavy paperwork, but it does require clarity that is accessible to those who need it. Durability also means that when someone new takes a role, they can quickly understand what outcomes they own and what governance expectations apply. Without this, organizations repeat mistakes because the reasons behind decisions are lost. On the exam, scenarios sometimes mention inconsistent practices across time or across departments, which can be a clue that accountability is not durable. Answers that strengthen role clarity, decision traceability, and operating rhythm can resolve this type of drift. Think of durable accountability as institutional memory built into governance. Finally, role assignment must be aligned with real authority and resources, because otherwise governance creates frustration and failure. If someone is accountable but lacks authority, they cannot enforce standards, secure funding, or resolve conflicts, and the organization either blames them unfairly or ignores accountability altogether. If someone has authority but is not accountable, they can make decisions without owning consequences, which encourages risky shortcuts. Governance aims to pair authority and accountability so that power and responsibility match. It also provides escalation when a role cannot meet expectations due to constraints, so that leadership can adjust resources or priorities. For beginners, a helpful lens is to ask, if this person is accountable, what levers do they have to influence the outcome, and what happens when they cannot? When the answer to those questions is unclear, accountability will not be enforceable. Exam answers that create this pairing, along with monitoring and escalation, usually reflect mature governance thinking. To close, assigning roles and responsibilities so accountability is visible and enforceable means defining ownership of decisions and outcomes in a way that is clear, measurable, durable, and supported by authority. Roles define who is responsible for key governance areas like investments, risk, compliance, service performance, and benefit realization, while responsibilities define what each role must do and what decisions each role must make. Visible accountability makes ownership traceable so problems do not bounce between teams, and enforceable accountability adds monitoring, remediation, and escalation so ownership leads to action when performance drifts. Strong governance also clarifies the difference between consultation and accountability, reduces handoff failures by defining boundary responsibilities, and pairs authority with responsibility so accountability is fair and effective. As you continue into governance strategy and compliance topics, keep this principle in mind. Governance becomes real only when someone can be clearly identified as owning an outcome and has the means to influence it. When you can spot missing ownership and fix it with clear roles, you are practicing one of the most foundational skills that CGEIT is designed to test.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.